Welcome to The Founder's Mind. This is your host, Adam Muchler. On today's episode, I have Cortni Grange, self-proclaimed multi-potentialite and founder of the nonprofit Fly. Cortni shares his perspective on how he taps into what drives him and embraces his potential on many fronts. I've got Cortni Grange on The Founder's Mind today. Welcome, Cortni.
Thank you, sir. I'm happy to be here.
Very excited to have you. We're at Alley, co-working space in DC. They've got some quiet spaces, so it's good to be here.
Oh, yeah.
I'd like to kick things off and just, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, give the listeners an idea of what you're up to, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So from my end of the spectrum, I am a self-proclaimed multi-potentialite, so made popular by Emily Wapnick's TED Talk. Okay. I'm one of those people that actually explored the rabbit hole and found her putty tribe and bought the book and subscribed to the methodology and have now almost completely adopted one of the four work models of a multi-potentialite.
Multi-potentialite?
Yeah. So to keep it on pace and explain it. So what a multi-potentialite at its core is the acceptance that we have multiple passions and they don't always have to connect to one another. Okay. Sometimes they can, sometimes they won't. But like exploring what makes you come alive is not a bad thing. And so where previously in life it might have been, I'm in grad school to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm going to be an actor.
Yeah.
Well, now I've been looking at like this custom personal chef thing, right?
Yeah.
Like those of us that have always been more drawn to just different things.
Yeah.
The multi-potentialite concept allows us to put framework around that energy.
Yeah.
And then like actually not go crazy or not be able to make money or, you can actually do this thing from a perspective that makes sense.
This is so funny. This is literally why I started this podcast, is to talk to people and like learn things. And you can't see my face, but I got this huge grin on my face because I'm like, maybe I'm a multi-potentialite.
You probably are. Most people are.
And, immediately like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Richard Branson, like those big names come to mind where they're changing multiple industries.
Yeah. And it's happened. So for me, I introduce myself as a father, a social entrepreneur, sales psychology coach, purpose counselor, African traditional priest, and chief of all things connectivity.
Just a couple things.
The ones that I can get into a small sentence.
That's awesome. And like I said, I just learned something new, which I appreciate. And hopefully, people listening will pick something up also. You're doing a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And you look at yourself obviously as pushing forward in a lot of different arenas. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that's kind of dominating your space or that you're really, getting behind right now?
So the beauty of the multi-potentialite construct is that while there are defined work models, it also says like, look, do whatever works for you. Like take time to figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what I've done for the past year. So in exiting corporate America, where I was in sales and consulting for almost 16 years. Mm-hmm. Last 5 years, I've been running a youth development and sports nonprofit. Yeah.
Fly?
Fly.
Cool.
And for the last 365 days, I've been going through a spiritual initiation to connect back to more African traditional belief systems. Mm-hmm. And so it was through this year that I really found the clarity for everything. Cool. And the message that came to me was, it's cool to be a jack of all trades as long as you're a master of yourself.
Yeah.
And really knowing why you're doing something, what purpose it has for you, as opposed to I'm trying to check off this box of success or I see this in society and now I want to achieve this.
Yeah.
But you really haven't determined why it even matters to you. And so that was a lot of the work I did this year, and to allow me to say, okay, my sales strategy coaching, my nonprofit consulting, that work is baseline. Mm-hmm. That's what pays the bills.
Sure.
That's what allows me to feed my son. That's the stuff that actually makes money.
Yeah.
The other things that I am into are more personal passions that just keep me going. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, after years in sales, and I've always seen sales as like the foundational business education model, right?
Yeah.
Like people go to B school and they come out and do accounting or finance.
Yeah.
But like if you can do sales, you can learn all parts of business.
Yeah.
And so when I got bored with that, it was like, oh, damn. Like, all right, well, I thought this was the mountaintop. And so I realized like well, I love business, but I love people. I love spirituality. I love self-discovery. I love fitness. I love like mental-based work. And I wanted to do all of that. And so what I basically do is I've tooled my services, my products seasonally. Right. And so summertime is body-based work.
Sure.
We're out, we're physical, we're doing what we have to do. And so I do health challenges, health coaching, fitness instruction during the summertime.
All right.
The fall and the spring is when we're doing a lot of decision making. Right.
Okay.
And so we're looking for something to help us make a decision on what we would do because everything is possible.
Yeah.
You can go out or you can stay in. You can travel or you can stay local because the weather's nice, but it ain't nice. Right. And so that for me was spiritual based work. Concepts of discernment, like not making a choice, but understanding why you're making a choice. And the wintertime is just straight mind work because we're in hibernation mode.
Oh, yeah.
We're doing a lot of time by ourselves or with certain people. It may be snowing. The weather may be yucky, so you're staying put.
Yeah.
And so you can work on, in that time period, how do I handle my most difficult emotional aspects? Myself. So, for example, people that deal with depression or anxiety generally create routines that are outwardly facing. I go to the gym. I go have a drink. I go hang out with my friends. Very few people get depressed and then like sit by themselves.
Yeah.
Because you don't know how to treat yourself.
Sure.
You don't know how to get in touch with that.
Yeah.
And so that work is a lot of mental stuff. Like you can go down mental rabbit holes. And so I know it's a lot, but it works for me. And it's easy to identify because like as soon as the weather changes, like my mindset changes.
All right.
And I on to the next thing.
So I think this is kind of an interesting conversation thread in the work that you do. And you mentioned you were in corporate America for a long time. And I think a lot of people that found or start companies or businesses, there's this leap.
Yes.
Right. Where they're on the track that they're familiar with and that they've seen, which is right. Corporate America or getting a job, having a career and climbing the ladder, quote unquote. What was sort of the first pull away from corporate America? Like
great question.
Real one.
Surprisingly success.
Yeah.
So I literally remember it. 2014, I was number one in the nation. I had just launched a brand new product. I had trained a senior sales team that literally looked at me like, who's this kid that's going to tell us what to do? And did it successfully. And I was on track to pretty much write my own ticket. And I couldn't have felt more empty.
Yeah.
Tons of money in stock options, literally a free trip to Barcelona on the way, promotion in the works. I could do what I wanted. But what got to me, actually, it was the success that made me start to search in other places. And so when I started to work on the initial aspects of Fly, which really started out as mentoring, I immediately found that the professional world was not specifically friendly to my passion. So, for example, like I mentioned, I'm number one in the nation and I'm doing sales. I specifically chose sales because I don't want people to tell me what to do every day.
Yeah.
But there's this concept of, well, you got to be in the office on Fridays.
Right.
I was like, well, Fridays is actually when I want to go to the school and talk to the kids.
Yeah.
No, you can't do that. You have to be here. Okay, can I leave at noon? No, you have to be here.
Yeah.
And that was the moment where I realized, okay, it doesn't matter how much I perform. It doesn't matter how much success I have.
Yeah.
I'll never be able to tool my universe the way I want
Sure.
as long as I'm doing it for somebody else.
Yeah.
And that started to eat at me. And there would be days where I would sit in that office and they would be going through numbers for the week or having conversations. And I would just be like, my God, I'd rather be like out here playing basketball with these kids or doing anything other than this worthless piece of time that just checks a box. Like this isn't even actual development, right? And that's what started it. And that small little, I guess you can call it cut, right?
Sure.
Created a hole. And the hole created a wound. And that wound created a scar. And that scar never went away.
Yeah. There's there are a couple of really interesting things that came to mind when I was listening to you. One is, and I always take this with a grain of salt because Bill Gates has a ton of money, but he's quoted as saying, wealth can really be defined about being rich or wealthy, about how you control your time, not how much money you have.
How much money you have. Yeah.
And it's easy for him to say, but it's also kind of true.
Yeah, it's so my favorite quote ever in life is wealth is the ability to fully experience life. Yeah. And I love the quote because how you define wealth determines the rest of that whole statement. Yeah. And I honestly, I agree. And it's one of the reasons why I'm in the business that I'm in. I think for the same reason, is being a bigger driver of where I'm putting my focus, how I'm spending my energy, and, time
meaning can I take these days without having to negotiate with anyone
Yes.
to do maybe a different piece of work,
Mm-hmm.
maybe something personal, whatever it is. So the first pull was kind of this, you reach the mountaintop
Mm-hmm.
and you're still shackled or feeling that there's nowhere to move.
Yeah.
And what took you from there to Fly or an organization or an approach to work that took you literally out
Of the space.
I'm assuming you had some pretty serious golden handcuffs.
Oh, yeah. And not only did I have them, I took them off, then got married, had a kid, and put them back on. Because as you probably know, like trying to build a family,
Yeah.
like it ain't cheap.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like, healthcare benefits matter when you have a child.
Yeah.
So I've experienced all of the ins and outs of entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
working for somebody else, and just trying to really get resolve around it. But I think for me, what began to happen first was actually something that I now look back on as more of a training ground, like a lesson, something that I no longer do, which is I wanted to take control. I really wanted to control everything. I wanted to control my day, my income, when I got the chance to do whatever I wanted to do. I had the very typical, an entrepreneur gets to do whatever they want.
Sure.
And that drove me. Like, you're not going to determine my wealth and my value anymore because you have my job description. I'm going to control that.
Yeah.
And so that carried me for a good 3.5, 4 years. Surprisingly, I didn't burn out or it didn't click, right?
Yeah.
But control got me to a certain point.
Yeah.
Until I realized that control is just as damaging as the constructs I was trying to get away from, right? Because at the end of the day, we have very little control. We have a ton of opportunity.
Yeah.
And perspective is more what you have control over, but you can't control life.
Yeah.
Things are going to happen. And so, for example, if I went after a grant and I won the grant, I'm happy. If I lose the grant, I'm unhappy.
Yeah.
Whereas if I control my perspective, the opportunity to go after the grant, learn, and then move forward is actually the gift.
Sure.
Right? Because I could win it, not really know how I want it, and never get it again.
Yeah.
That's just as bad. Or I could lose it, learn exactly what I missed out on, and now I get it every single year.
Yeah.
And so that, for me now, is the space I move into where there's this concept of discernment over control, right?
Yeah. I always think about the distinction between control and vision.
Yeah.
You know, like I have a vision for my life and I have a vision for my business and even visions in the relationships that I have.
Right.
You know, like I envision it doing, going a certain way, but just to your point, I don't actually control.
Exactly.
Like I don't control if someone says yes or no to a pitch. I don't control if a client, continues to work with me.
Yeah.
I am envisioning that we keep working together.
Yep.
And I hope it for certain situations. But I think it's a good distinction around control.
And that's a lot of the work that I do with just personal development, purpose coaching is manifestation. Right?
Yeah.
Like you fundamentally have to get into a better place where you are not looking to control things, you're looking to manifest them.
Yeah.
And so a buddy of mine who's done a lot of this type of work started me on this journey of manifesting parking spots.
Manifesting parking spots.
It's the coolest thing I've ever experienced because it actually works.
Did you do it today?
I've done it every day since I had the conversation.
Because you found a parking spot and I didn't.
Right, and I got one right out front.
Exactly, and I had to pay $20.
Yeah.
So
I think I paid $2.
Okay, yeah, for sure. I mean, on the
but
meter.
it's straight up just manifestation. Like the way he would do it came from I think a book he read that talked about just like how to have the perfect day.
Okay.
And it starts the night before. So manifesting parking spots started with a good friend of mine. His name is Theo Graham. And he's just one of these people that like he's just lived his life the way he wanted to.
Sure.
He does things because he believes in them. And that's just kind of how it works. So we're having this conversation about I'm stuck in a rut, like mentally I'm having some blocks. And he's like, yo, you should start small by manifesting small things. So basically he would say when he was a teacher, he would get up and say, okay, I'm going to drive. I'm going to go up the hill. There's going to be a red car. Once the red car moves, I'll see where my spot's going to be. And that would be it. Like just manifest that situation. And he would do it and it would happen. And so like we're standing there at the gym and he's like, do you see where my car is? I'm like, yeah. He's like right out front of the door all the time. He was like, I pulled in here. 3 cars passed by that spot. And I just pulled right in. And so I started it one day and I was like, all right, fine, let's get it. And it worked. And then I did it again. And then it started to happen unconsciously. Like I would just put the energy of, I need a spot. I don't need to search for this.
Yeah.
And it would just show up and you just had to be patient. It wasn't like I pull up spots right there. Yeah. It was like, no, my spot's going to come.
Yeah.
My spot's going to come. Oh, there it is. But I started with that and just like I talked about the perception.
Yeah.
The joy that you get from giving up control, but still like accepting your vision.
Yeah.
It starts to push you into do it in other ways.
Yeah.
Can you do it in relationships? Can you do it in your work? Can you do it in the next blog article you write? Can you just really start to manifest the thing that you want just by saying, I want this and I'm going to be patient until it comes?
Yeah. There's a hip hop artist. His name is Russ. And he has a song called Manifest. And one of my favorite lines from it.
Okay.
It's like 1 minute and 40 seconds a song. It's real quick.
Jeez.
But one of my favorite lines is anything I want, I speak into existence. You know,
Yep.
and it just resonates with me so much.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of connects with a lot of what you're sharing and my own personal beliefs and a big part of coaching also.
Absolutely.
You know, is what is that thing that you're working towards? What is that thing that you want? And it might be, you know, for an NBA player, it might be that championship, you know,
or something like that. Yeah.
But there are lots of things in between you and that championship.
Yeah.
And are you thinking about all of the other little things and, you know, putting that in your mind and all of those steps in between where you are now and that next level, which probably isn't the championship for most people.
Yeah. And
know?
it's the reality of perception in terms of understanding, like have big dreams.
Yeah.
But I utilize a fundamental like old school military tactic of aim small, miss small.
Yeah.
Right. If my dream requires me to go through certain constructs that I don't have control over in any way and anything can happen, then you gotta be mindful of that, right? An NBA championship, for example, LeBron James.
Sure.
LeBron James deserves an NBA championship. LeBron James can win an NBA championship. LeBron James can't control the teams he plays.
Yeah.
Can't control what happens in free agency. He can't control where other players go and how they tool together and how a coach can get that team to play better than his team.
Yeah.
All he can do is control himself.
Yeah.
And so that's one of those things where it's like, you got to be careful with what you dream, because if you are dreaming something that requires too many other things to line up for you to achieve it, you're aiming too big. Like you don't aim at the big part of the target, you aim at the center.
Yeah.
And you miss a little bit and you come back more. You miss a little bit and you come back more. But the target is still a target. The shot that you take has to be more specific.
Yeah. I wonder, you know, I think it's kind of an interesting breakdown. You can't control the players, the coach, you know, and other pieces, and you can only control a small piece of the target. And I wonder what element of, and we won't dig into it too much, but if your vision is to win a championship, or is your vision to find, you know, other individuals as committed as you are? You know?
It's a good point, right? And you can look no further than Kevin Durant for that answer, right?
Yeah.
But I see both sides of the argument, right? Some people condemn him for going to the team that he lost to, right? Some people praise him for being smart enough to ensure that his legacy was going to be solidified.
Yeah.
Whatever side of the argument you want to take, you're probably right. It doesn't matter at the end of the day, because guess what? Who you're not. You're not Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
And he did what he felt was the best decision for him. And the real truth, and this is a fact of it, Kevin Durant didn't start that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm making a decision to take my talents to South Beach.
Yeah.
That started this. That was the first time we saw a player fundamentally make a move that changed the whole construct of the NBA.
Sure.
And so you want to blame somebody? Like, blame the person that started it, not the person that benefited from it.
Yeah. And I mean, there's also an element of that, and it's interesting that we're getting into the sports side of this, but in general, you know, when companies make big decisions, you know, oftentimes it's around their fiscal responsibility.
Absolutely.
Right? If they have investors, if they're publicly traded, and it's the same with people in their life. And I think one thing that people get caught up on is making decisions that they think they have to make, which is a player maybe staying on a team too long, or, you know, a company not making a certain decision because it's feels unusual. Yeah. But you have a responsibility to, like, who's your core stakeholder? Yeah. So Kevin Durant, core stakeholder? Him and probably the people that we don't know that are in his life.
Exactly.
The people right around him.
Same. Yeah.
You know, and I worked at Apple for 7 years in retail, but Apple does things that drive, corporate watchdogs crazy.
Yeah.
The reality is they have a fiscal responsibility to make money and to return value to their shareholders.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And they have the resources to navigate all the loopholes that are out there. But the fact is, there are loopholes.
Yeah, there's always loopholes.
There are, and they're taking advantage of them because they have a responsibility to return value.
It's funny that we're getting to that through this too. Like I'm always excited how connectivity makes things just move.
Yeah.
So one of the major pieces of my purpose coaching is blind spot identification.
Sure.
Right. And it's sitting there with somebody and saying, okay, let's talk. And for whatever reason, I'm good at noticing the blind spots. Like, oh, you said you're doing this, but like there's this thing over here that's probably completely hindering you that you're not paying attention to. And a lot of times in business, one of the things my father taught me very early, and he's a sales guy as well, was sales are emotional things that are based on logic. Right. And so most of the time when we're buying something, even if it's just an idea or a decision, it's emotional. Yeah. We see something, it triggers us, and then we do something. Yeah. Then we find logic to back up what we felt. Right. And so you see a lot of this in business where somebody makes a move or somebody, like you were saying, does something based on something they saw. Sure. That changes what they now believe is truth. Yeah. But at the end of the day, like, it could or it couldn't, right? We've seen it plenty of times. Like when Steve Jobs was removed from Apple, that was an emotional sale based on logic. Oh, yeah. Logically, he was fucking up. But it was emotional, too, because of who he was. Yeah. But then as time played out, like we saw the truth of the matter, which was that logically, you can't do the thing without without him, right? It couldn't be done without him. And so it had to change itself back to what it needed to be.
Yeah, I think that's something that and I'm sure other people have articulated, just like you mentioned your father. Yeah. Simon Sinek has his golden circle, which it sounds like maybe he plagiarized from your dad, but
We're about the same age. So.
Yeah, we make decisions based on emotion. Yeah. Almost all the time. There's some people that have challenged themselves to be very rational. And I think that when we look at the decision-making process, we often don't remember or realize that there's an emotional trigger in there. And all of it. And they talk, Simon Sinek talks about why. Yeah. And brands that talk about why have a much more hardcore following. Yeah.
It gets into, and that for me is where it becomes a spiritual thing, because how you handle your emotions is generally based on how you are being conditioned to understand the emotional space. Emotional space is the uncontrollable space, same as the spiritual space. And so one of the things that I've done a lot of work on is, as a man, right, accepting the fact that I am a more logical, as a masculine energy man, because masculine and feminine are just energies. You can house them in whatever vehicle you choose. But as a fundamentally masculine man, emotions are my double-edged sword. Yeah. They allow me to connect, but they also are the thing that blind me because I have them. Yeah. And so sometimes we don't take the opportunity as men to push out our emotions to then clear the space to be more logical and see discernment. So like we don't wake up in the morning and invoke something that makes us cry. Sure. We don't wake up in the morning and scream at the top of our lungs and get it out of our system. Or put on music that makes us dance in a way that we would feel vulnerable about if we were in public. But by doing those things, now that space is clear. Now guess what you have left? Logic and discernment. Yeah. You've cleared your emotional decision making for the day. And it's something that I've worked on with a couple buddies of mine. Like we'll get up, we'll talk about just a rough time. Sure. And then as one individual starts to cry, we'll let it build. And then we'll do it. And then we'll go box. And then we'll go make a business deal. It's the weirdest thing, but it's like you've got to get that off of you, especially if you're in a relationship with a fundamentally feminine energy that's based on love. Yeah. They require that energy. They require that emotion, but you can't constantly be in that space. Yeah. And so to best understand it, you've got to put yourself in a position where it's not overpowering you. There's an amazing book, The Way of the Superior Man, that breaks down this whole concept. It was the first time I saw it put into context that wasn't like toxic masculinity. It was empowering masculinity by understanding that like it's just another form of energy. Dude. Yeah. It's not bad. It's just different.
Now I have so many questions. This is great. So one, I want to go back. You said as a masculine energy man. And so you having read this book and having explored this, obviously, you're saying that's a distinction, masculine energy and you are a man.
Exactly.
Versus maybe less masculine energy and you're a man, or feminine energy and you're a man. We covered so much ground. There's so much that I've learned. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. One thing I always ask at the end is, how can people that are listening find you, follow you? Is there a place that you want them to check out?
Yeah.
To see what you're up to?
So I'm a very easy person to find because of the way my name is spelled. Cortni Grange, Cortni Grange. If you type it into Google, it's pretty much the only thing that pops up. But you can always find me on LinkedIn from a more business, social entrepreneurship, sales strategy, nonprofit consulting construct. Those places, those products and services, LinkedIn. You'll find me. You'll find me talking. You'll be able to connect with me. If you just want to see some cool shit, what's going on in my life, my Instagram is always open. It's an open book. But the best place is probably going to be my website, and it's just my name, CourtneyGrange.com.
Cool. Thank you so much, Cortni. This was great.
Awesome, man. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Founder's Mind. On the next episode, Rachel, the founder of the UPace app and an organizer at DC Startup Week, shares her experience in growing a tech startup from the ground up. To make sure you don't miss any awesome wisdom from guests and stay up to date on the most recent episodes of The Founder's Mind, be sure to visit thefoundersmind.com. You can also follow along on social at The Founder's Mind. I look forward to sharing future episodes with you all, and if you like what you're hearing on the show, take a moment to rate and review The Founder's Mind. It would mean a lot and is greatly appreciated. Until next time, take care.
In the world, going through all of this insanity, and try to bring new ideas, make them a reality. Illuminate in the thoughts, make it a priority to implement what you learn. What you get is what you be. In a world full of noise, hard to find that clarity to try to lead subtly, never full of vanity, and try to change something small or try to change humanity. Power forward through the dark, founder's mind is what you see.